Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today I want to talk about Master Architect and War Machine and whether they are useful or not in raids and in dungeons, because I think a lot of people are interested in those. So you see, the set itself is pretty strong. We get the 3-piece bonus Minor Slayer and the 5-piece bonus when we use Ultimate. We get the Major Slayer buff for 10 seconds, boosting our damage for 15%. So this works in dungeons, trials, Mercenary Marine and all kind of stuff. Similar to like the Minor Slayer. Now, how good are those? So on Magicka setups, I don't really like them because most people rely on Destro ultimates from the Destruction tree. And it costs a lot, it's 250 ulti, so you don't use it a lot, right? But on stamina setups, where you use cheaper ultimates like Dawnbreaker, only costs 125, sometimes even only 100. Like Stem Templar has access to a 75 ulti points ulti. Stem Sorg, Dawnbreaker costs like 107, and all that kind of stuff. So on Stem setups, yes, if you use cheap ultimates. On Magicka setup, I don't necessarily like them because we use Destro ultis and you only will have a small uptime. Now, on a Stem setup that uses Dawnbreaker, let's say on the Stem Dragon Knight, how much uptime do we get? Okay, let's see, let's use this one. Major Slayer. So we have a 25% uptime from Major Slayer. 23% was from myself and 2% from another person. When we go check another fight, maybe I did have it here. This is a Magicka Stamina Templar actually. Let me check if we had. Major Slayer 41%. That's because I'm using Crescent Sweep, which only costs 75 ulti points. Let me find another, maybe we have, let's see. This here is on a Stem Sorg. Let's take the Pineapple Factotum again. Major Slayer, 24%. So most likely it's like when you really use it on cooldown, it's gonna be around 30% uptime more or less. If only yourself uses it. Now, is it good or bad? It depends, because you also give the buff to 2 other players, so it's actually pretty strong. However, there is one big problem with the buff. Not necessarily the set, but how the buff works. So, the 15% damage is really strong, but when, let's say, I have the War Machine set and the dude next to me has also the War Machine set. What does the game do, or the buff system, or however you want to call it? If we activate it both at the same time, our ultimates, buff overrides each other. It doesn't go to a new person that doesn't have the buff. And that's one of the big problems. Like, the system doesn't check whether I already have the buff or not. It just checks the 2 closest persons, bam, they will get the buff, that's it. That's the biggest problem so far with the set. Sure, in the end it's a positioning issue, but if you're a melee, like, you're always close to the tanks. And if mostly Stem setups use this, you will always be close to the tanks. And sure, you can kind of coordinate a little bit, that not the same people get it. But when, for example, a tank uses this set and he tries to buff, like when you're on a warden, you almost can, with the right build, you can keep this buff up 100% of the time. You give it to yourself and the 2 closest allies. So if another tank, the off tank, stands next to you, he will get the buff. And if another dude, let's say a Magicka Deacon stands there, he will get the buff. Now if me, as a third melee, also has the War Machine set, because I have cheap ultimates and I activate it, the same Magicka DK could get the buff and it just overrides each other and it's not going to the next target. And that's where my biggest problem with the set is. If you have a tank using this set, I don't necessarily think it's a good choice. there is better options. Like you could go 5 pieces Hunting's Rage, you would gain more DPS. Or like 5 pieces Vicious Serpent, but obviously the weapons are hard to get there. So in the end, you kind of need to decide yourself, are you the only one wearing it? If yes, then it's probably a good thing, but you also need to look where you stand. Don't use the ability, like the ultimate next to the tank. You need to make sure to stay between 2 other damage dealers so they benefit from this buff for the 10 seconds. I really hope ZeniMax will change this a little bit, because it's just, I mean, the set would be nice, but if it overrides the buffs, it's just kind of stupid. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's probably the case with a lot of other abilities as well, or like sets. It's not only this here, but I just noticed this because I have been running this set, those 2 sets on most of my characters just to test around a little bit, and most of the times it's like 25 to 30% uptime. And even if 2 people use it, like you still get the same uptime because you just override each other more or less. That's basically it, just a short video. What do you think? Like, for myself, I really hope ZeniMax could integrate a system where it detects, like the set realizes, oh, this dude already has the buff, so let's give it to the next person that is further away. Because that would make the set way more efficient at what it does than it currently is. That's already it. I hope you understood what I tried to say. If you have questions or any comments, comment section below. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. Cheers.